USS Monitor, Hampton Roads, March 15, 1862. Dear Maddie, your kind and much looked for letter came to hand, and at a time when I was very downhearted, and it revived me at once. I see you are highly elated at the success of the Monitor, but hold on, we have only commenced. You will soon hear more from us. We expect every day to see the Merrimack poking herself down here, and she will not get away from us again. We will capture her or sink her the next time. Kiss the babies for me and tell them Papa will come home soon to see them. Your affectionate, George.
The ship was still full of workmen, hurrying her to completion when Commodore Franklin Buchanan arrived from Richmond and ordered everyone out of the ship except her crew of 350 men, and directed Executive Officer Jones to prepare to sail at once. "Ramsey," he asked, "what would happen to your engines and boilers if there should be a collision?" "They are braced tight," I assured him. "Though the boilers stand 14 feet, they are so securely fastened, no collision could budge them." "I'm going to ram the Cumberland," said my commander. "I'm told she has the new rifled guns, the only ones in their whole fleet we have cause to fear." As we rounded into view the white-winged sailing crafts that sprinkled the bay, long lines of tugs and small boats scurried to the far shore, like chickens on the approach of a hovering hawk. They'd seen our black hulk, which looked like the roof of a barn afloat. As we drew nearer the Cumberland, above the roar of the battle rang the voice of Buchanan. "Do you surrender?" "Never!" retorted the gallant Morris. We had rushed on the doomed ship, relentless as fate, crashing through her barricade of heavy spars and torpedo fenders, striking her below her starboard fore chains, and crushing far into her. For a moment the whole weight of her hung on our prow and threatened to carry us down with her, the return wave of collision curling up into our port bow. The Cumberland began to sink slowly. We had left our cast iron beak in the side of the Cumberland. Like the Wasp, it stung her but once, leaving it in a wound. We now turned to the Congress, and the battle raged once more. The Merrimack worked closer all the time with her bow pointed as if to ram the Congress. A shell from Lieutenant Wood's gun sped through their line of powder passes, not only cutting down the men, but exploding the powder buckets in their hand, spreading death and destruction, and setting fire to the ship. At last came the order. "Cease firing! The Congress has surrendered!" someone cried.
This is the most important day of the battle at Hampton Roads, because this is the day that all the navies of the world found out that wooden warships could not stand up to ironclad ships, because the Virginia had been virtually untouched. It was the worst defeat the U.S. Navy had until Pearl Harbor. The government in Washington, D.C. was just scared stiff. They thought the Virginia was going to come up the Potomac River and just level the capital.
When about halfway between Fortress Monroe and Cape Henry, we spoke to a pilot boat. He told us the Cumberland was sunk and the Congress was on fire and had surrendered to the Merrimack. Badly indeed did we feel to think those two fine old vessels had gone to their last homes with so many of their brave crews. Our hearts were very full, and we vowed vengeance on the Merrimack. The Merrimack got underway, accompanied by several steamers, and started direct for the Minnesota. When a mile distant, she fired 2 guns at the Minnesota. By this time, our anchor was up, the men at quarters, the guns loaded, and everything ready for action. As the Merrimack came closer, the captain passed the word to commence firing. I triced up the port, run the gun out, and fired the first gun, and thus commenced the great battle between the Monitor and the Merrimack. Once she tried to run us down with her iron prow, but did no damage whatever. After fighting for 2 hours, we hauled off for half an hour to hoist shot in the tower. At it, we went again as hard as we could. The shot, shell, grape, canister, musket, and rifle balls flew around us in every direction, but did us no damage. At about 11:30, the captain sent for me. He said a shot had struck the pilot house exactly opposite his eyes and had blinded him. He told me to take charge of the ship and use my own discretion. We had strict orders to act on the defensive and protect the Minnesota. We had evidently finished the Merrimack as far as the Minnesota was concerned. Our pilot house was damaged, and we had strict orders not to follow the Merrimack up. Therefore, after the Merrimack had retreated, I went to the Minnesota and remained by her until she was afloat. The fight was over now, and we were victorious. My men and myself were perfectly black with smoke and powder. The next morning at 8 o'clock, we got underway and stood through our fleet. Cheer after cheer went up from the frigates and small craft for the glorious little Monitor.
The lesson of March 9th is that ironclad ships can go toe-to-toe, and there's no victor. Each side thought they had won. In fact, it was a draw. Strategically, the Confederates had managed to win a victory because the U.S. Navy would not be able to get up the James River. Tactically, the Monitor had gained a victory because the Virginia didn't get to sink the rest of the U.S. fleet.